Hello, Chunky. This is the Voice of Reason live from Fosway. This is the newest prison in the country, home to 1,800 of the most violent and sexually promiscuous criminals. And this week they've had a disaster. 4 of their officers are no longer here. They were arrested. How can you have criminals who are running the criminals in prison? Find out more next.
Don't trust the mainstream media. They'll make your teeth itch. Alex Belfield's Voice of Reason.
Hello, Chunky. It's the Voice of Reason for a Wednesday. Tonight from 9, we are back live with the phone-in. Sundays was amazing. We had Andrew Bridgen in my kitchen, and we were doing the live phone-in. People asked him questions, and he revealed so much. We're doing the filibustering bit now so that YouTube doesn't get nervous because they don't like it when I start saying dirty words like mud and soil. Yesterday was interesting. I popped off to HMP Fosway, which is the prison I was in for 16 months. I'd never driven into it in a car, my car. But I did yesterday, and I hadn't realised that there are no signs for the prison anywhere, and you can't see it. In fact, it says it goes to a territorial army centre, not the prison. And then you get to the gate, and there's no gate. And then you see there's no sign, and it doesn't say you can't enter. So I did. What you see the authorities hate about me, the hairy rozzers, and the constables, CONTSTABLES, is that I know the law. And they're going to be very, very upset about this video because in it I can prove that HMP Fosway is probably the most corrupt and broken of all HMP prisons because it's private, ran by imbeciles, one of which came out to say, "You can't come here." I said, says who? You haven't even got a fucking sign on the gate that says private, you're so fucking incompetent. Anyway, this man drove off and phoned security, who did nothing, because the law is very clear that you can broadcast from a public road. It is as simple as that. And I am a journalist, as I clutch my pearls, as Judge Insani said when he gave me 5.5 years for words, boo-hoo, hurty words, because people didn't want me to say the things I was saying. Well, it's very interesting. I went back to the very prison that is home to 1,800 convicted criminals, both nonces and professional criminals, and it's not going very well. I'll play you the video next. What you need to know about this super prison by Boris Johnson is that people are dying and are going to die. In fact, I think there's been 16 deaths since it opened in about 2 years. That's a lot. But when you consider nearly 400 people a year die at HMP in a system that is self-diagnosed as basically in cardiac arrest by its own manager, Miss Mahood, the lady who is in a very bad Mahood because she wants to send all the foreign criminals back, well, she ain't going to like this video. It's humiliating. On the 6th of September, I released my first book about the HMP system, the prison system where you pleasure His Majesty and they treat you like a king, costing you £48,000. There was no torture for me going to prison. I wrote 6 books and had a lovely time with some very nice people and have some incredible stories to share over 4 books. Surely that's not the principle of prison, is it? That you go in and have a nice time and you go in the £300,000 gym at Fosway and get your wonderful meditation sessions on a Wednesday and go in the coffee shop for a free latte whenever you want because the nice people like you and give you one.
The barista coffee, where we're giving people customer service experience, working with the general public and providing the service. These skills all support them when they get out of custody.
And then pop to the barbers to get a haircut for free. Yes, there's a barber's with scissors. What could possibly go wrong? The corrupt bosses there will be exposed in book 6, and they've read it because they've just handed it back 6 weeks after it went missing. They haven't handed my letters back though at Fosway. Can I have them, please? The boss has banned me from emailing. What are they scared of? What is it about me that makes these people so scared? But just be aware, the law is very clear. I am perfectly entitled to film where I want in a public space. And if you're stupid enough to have a fucking prison that hasn't got any signs on the door, that doesn't say private, no filming, or indeed that it is a prison, how was I to know where I was? It was merely my Apple map that got me to a very curious place where, during my stay, a man was murdered. And this week, another man's nearly been murdered. So let me play you the tape yesterday at HMP Fosway. Let me know what you think in the comments, share. Please subscribe here, that would really help. And join me at alexbelfield.com where you get all of this unedited in advance. Enjoy my trip back to prison. So here we go then for a Tuesday. It's Alex Belfield live across the world at HMP Fosway. This is one of the most modern prisons in the world. It was meant to be all digital, and they said that it would be one of the safest because they'd be able to monitor everything through the thousands of cameras. The problem is, of course, that unfortunately they ended up mixing the nonces with the professional criminals, and it didn't go down very well.
So HMP Fosway is unique in many ways. For a start, the build itself, you'll see that the windows are barless, which was actually a psychologically informed aspect of the build.
Now, in each of these house blocks, on every floor, there's 60-ish men. There's 4 floors, which means you've got 200 cooey to all the people who work here, going home, minding their own business. In each of these, there's about 250 cons, and they're opening a new block just over there. It's called Cell Block H, but they haven't got any staff. This prison this week, my spies tell me, is in virtual lockdown because they don't have the staff. One of them apparently killed themselves, an officer, recently, and since August 1st, 4 officers have been arrested for corruption, that is, bringing in drugs. On top of all of that, apparently the sexual assaults in E and F block, which is where they house the nonces, that is the sexual deviants who are brought here to mix, they thought it would work. Well, they're nonces because they're not on normal courtyard exercise. What that means is that they aren't allowed to be with the normal prisoners. But for the first year of this prison, that happened. And I saw firsthand how many hundreds of men were beat up. Now, it's hard to feel sorry for them because they're here for very, very serious crimes. Unlike me, I was brought here for talking, words, hurty words, and it offended a lot of people. The community here don't like it because if you see there on the top, these are the air conditioning things that stop people burning to death when they set fire to themselves, which regularly happens. A man this week was airlifted off A block, having been beaten up and nearly died. He was induced into a coma, and that could be the second murder here. We had one whilst I was here last September. A man was murdered. They went into his pad, and 2 were convicted.
Entering a cell of a convicted sex offender called Mahia Abdul Rahman. He was serving several weeks in jail for a sex offence. 2 of them have been convicted for their involvement. Ashery Smith has been convicted of murder.
It's absolutely unedifying that was able to happen in what is a CCAT prison. It's run by Serco. This is a private prison, and the problem is they can't get the staff. They're constantly understaffed, and you'll have 1 or 2 officers to 60 prisoners. Now, in a professional proper prison, like a HMP prison, you would only get probably 30 or 40.
Using smuggled phones suggests staff are under-supported and seem out of their depth. Here, a female officer on her own dealing with sexual intimidation from the male inmates. Sally says often just 1 member of staff is looking after 60 men on a landing.
So it's really concerning. This place was off its tits when I was here 2 or 3 months ago. Now I hear it is absolutely devastating to see the lack of resource to cope with the amount of very serious violent criminals who are here.
A drunken party in a prison cell posted recently by a prisoner on TikTok. This just a glimpse of a potentially dangerous problem.
So we know that the entire system is broken. That's by confession of its own Miss Mahood, who's in a very bad Mahood because it's not gone very well for her. This is meant to be one of the most state-of-the-art, most brilliant, most modern and safest prisons. It is not. It is riddled with drugs. They bring them into visits like they're Smarties, and it seems like nobody is doing anything about it.
Prisoners can access industries such as Caterpillar Simulator, doing excavator work, that sets people up and gives them the platforms and mindset to work out onto construction sites.
I know for a fact that they stole my book 6 the day before I left, along with all the rest of my paperwork. That went missing, and it's been found 5 or 6 weeks after I left and has been returned. Where's all my mail, though? Why hasn't Miss Mahood reacted to my pre-action letter to my judicial review to sue them over the many things that they did that was illegal, like not sending me to DCAT, for example? I was meant to be sent to an open prison. There are so many unanswered questions, but in there now is 250 prisoners, 1,800 prisoners in total. There are 3 now super prisons. There's Fosway here, there's 5 Wells in Wellingborough, and a new one up in Yorkshire, which are all identical. But the problem is when you put that many people into one area, what you end up with is a lot of very violent people and not many experienced staff. And it is the officers that are the problem. Many of them have nose piercings and are quite young and experienced. And the problem you've got when you have so many clever, manipulative prisoners is that those officers end up paying the price and end up injured and hurt and beat up, and also end up corrupted. That's why drugs are so plenty here. They're the cheapest drugs in the country, they tell me. I've been in 5 prisons. They're the cheapest here. You can get off your tits for nothing. When I was at Five Wells, another private prison, you could get a bottle of whiskey or vodka or gin or whatever you needed for about 200 quid. That's cheap in prison. It's amazing. So in my new book, Surviving the Slammer, I will tell the story of my first prison, which was HMP Lincoln, a proper prison, a Victorian prison that's a shithole. And then secondly, Stocken, which is the highest security CCAT prison in Britain. We will be talking about that in Surviving the Slammer, which is out September the 6th. You can pre-order that now.
We are well underway to delivering everything expected of us within the contract and beyond.
So what we have is a situation where you have a prison like that man there who's running it, who would rather cover up than actually tell the truth. And that's the problem. These places run on intimidation and cover up. It's sickening what's going on. And if you read in my new book, Surviving the Slammer, you'll see how HMPs are broken, but these private prisons are even worse.
Guardian readers, ambivalentious types, and champagne sippers, switch off now. Alex Belfield's voice of reason.